Good morning. Good morning. I'm trying to get back to a more regular posting schedule again. So today's video is about me starting this sketchbook and decorating the cover and stuff like that, while also working on some other projects. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing better. My hand is not great, but better. So yeah, enjoy the video. So I did some thumbnails at first in my big sketchbook, and these are supposed to be Rilla and Lucy, two of my characters from a different comic I'm working on, different from At World's End. I'll talk about it more while I work on the piece. So the official ship name for Lucy and Rilla is actually Bird Knight because of, Lucy is a knight and because of the situation that Rilla is in. I started with drawing Rilla on the right, and then later I move on to Lucy. But yeah, these are from different projects of mine, which I'm hoping to turn into a comic at some point. I've been working on At World's End, which you can actually read on my Tumblr as of now. It's finally out, at least the first chapter, and the second chapter will hopefully be coming pretty soon after this video comes out. But yeah, after I finish At World's End, I'll actually start working on this particular comic, but in the meantime, I'm just planning it out through character designs and miscellaneous notes and that kind of thing. But the main part of the story with Rilla and Lucy is that they're found in a fantasy world in which people are turning into monsters for a reason that I shan't uncover just yet, so as not to spoil like half of the plot of the project. But I might at some point. Lucy is also trans, which is really cool for me. The original concept for her was when I came up with the phrase, "My darling, if I do not return from battle tonight, please don't let them bury me with the wrong name," which is also a scene in one of the chapters in the comic. Or rather, will be when I actually get around to making it. So aside from obviously talking about the project itself with Lucy and Rilla and At World's End and whatnot, like stuff I'm working on recently, I also wanted to talk about social media a little in this video, because as an artist and as somebody trying to actually get into the art field more, especially with university and school and work and doing commissions and stuff like that, that has always felt unattainable unless you have like a huge following online. Well, not so much your career, but things like freelance art and, you know, selling your art in the form of stickers or commissions or anything like that. I've always despised things like Instagram and TikTok because of how unfriendly they are to actual artists. Like the fact that TikTok is, you know, you scroll but you see artists for like half a second and then maybe you think you're cool and you follow them, but you for the life of you would never remember who they actually are if you like saw their art outside of that context. And same with Instagram, which is like mainly focused on reels now, which is disgusting to me. I've been using Cara a lot in the past year or so. I love the portfolio format. Wow. I just saw the hugest. There's a thunderstorm where I'm at right now. I don't know if you can hear, but that was a big lightning. I got distracted. Anyway, Cara is really cool. It's super user intuitive and it lets you have the option of a portfolio, so you can separate your work that you post for fun, like just sketches or whatever, and work that you want to be in your portfolio for people hiring you or more important projects or commissions or anything like that. And I've been using that a lot. It's been great. It also just has a super interactive not fan base, but user base, I guess. It's very artist oriented, but that still poses the problem of if you want to actually sell your art in any way, shape, or form, you're gonna come to trouble with that with things like Kara, because it is almost entirely artist oriented and not just for, you know, anybody that wants to look at art, though there are people like that too, I'm sure. So what do you do? The main platforms I use for social media are just Kara, Tumblr, which I will talk about in a second, and YouTube. YouTube has been great because it has helped me actually build a community. I even have like a small Discord server, not for my YouTube specifically, but related to it, anyhow, with people interested in art or music or writing, anything like that, because I think keeping connected with creatives like yourself is really important and helps a lot when you're working on your own projects. So for the cover of the sketchbook, I'm actually using gouache this time. If you saw me starting my sketchbook number 14, I want to say, I did a cover art with Austin and Clay, my cowboy OCs, with arts acrylic markers, whereas this one is with gouache. Probably my favorite painting medium, honestly. It's like if acrylic and watercolor had a child. You can both use it in like a heavily diluted form and create a lot of cool textures and overlay, or you can also just like use it more thick, but I prefer building up a lot of layers, which is easy to do with gouache. And like you can cover up your mistakes in like watercolor, but at the same time it's way softer than acrylic. So yeah, gouache lovers unite. Let me know what your favorite medium is. But to continue with the topic of social media, I was gonna talk about Tumblr. So Tumblr is a platform that was surprisingly great. I only got it pretty recently and started actively posting on it, but the fact that it has tags and communities and a lot of people interested in fandoms makes it pretty easy to get your art around. Like, I posted my art of Silas and Daphne from The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, one of my favorite books ever, by the way, in their community on Tumblr, and it already has like almost 300 notes or something, I think. Follow me on Tumblr, by the way, it's great. But yeah, it makes your art very like accessible to anyone who's interested in the fandoms that you're in, or just, I don't know. I love the idea of having a blog where you can just like yap and say whatever and reblog other people's art and post your own art. It's very like friendly as a space, I would say. So yeah, Tumblr and Kara currently are the only like post and text post type social media that I use. I don't really use Instagram anymore, especially after their whole AI shenanigans. It disgusts me. But there is a way. To everyone out there who is despairing about commissions and getting yourself out there as an artist without using Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, there are ways. Even without social media at all, I'm sure, but I'm currently using these just also for my own benefit, because looking back at my art and having it in one place like Kara in my portfolio has been super useful, or like Tumblr for interacting with other fandoms. It's actually fun, which is something I've never said about social media before. YouTube is more of a passion project for me as well, but it takes a lot more effort than something like Tumblr or Kara would. And that's the underpainting done. So, moving on, in this video I'm also working on a new painting of mine, inspired by, well, not even inspired by, it is just of Silas and Daphne from The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, who I mentioned previously when talking about Tumblr. This book is genuinely one of my favorite pieces of literature that exists. I have never felt so seen and represented in any other piece of media or literature, or literally anything. The protagonist, Silas, who I'm currently sketching out before starting the painting to figure out how I want to draw his face shape, is trans and autistic, which is very rare to see in media.
Even just one of the two is super rare for especially a protagonist, but both? Never before. Don't quote me on that, of course. If, on the contrary, if anybody has recommendations for media where protagonists are trans and or autistic, I would love to hear, as I'm always looking for more things like that to explore. But yeah, also the way that Silas describes his feelings in the book, since it is all first person point of view from his point of view, of course, is just something I so heavily related to that I cried a lot of times throughout reading this book. So thank you to Andrew Joseph White for making this masterpiece. So while I worked on this, I actually wanted to talk about a specific scene that absolutely broke me while I was reading The Spirit Bears His Teeth by A.J. White. But obviously spoilers for The Spirit Bears His Teeth. This is from chapter 8, if I'm not mistaken. It might be a different one, but somewhere around there anyhow. The Spirit Bears His Teeth is generally a book about hurt and rage against the world, about the way the world used to treat women in Victorian England and still does now, for the way that it excludes anyone who differentiates even slightly from social norms and what is considered acceptable. Illustrated perfectly by the protagonist himself, Silas Bell. I'm going to be honest when I say that I cried a lot of times throughout this book, because it was the first time a character in any piece of media made me feel so incredibly seen, as I mentioned earlier. I identify so deeply with Silas for the way that he describes his experience with loving more than the opposite gender, not identifying with the one he was assigned at birth, for the way that his hands flutter and he rocks back and forth, and for the way he was told his whole life he was an odd and broken, but slowly realizes it's just the way his brain works. As somebody on the autism spectrum, it is really rare to see yourself represented that way. To be told, even though you know logically but never fully understand, that you're okay and you're normal, and society just does not see you as so. It is incredibly rare to see a trans and autistic protagonist in media, so I'm very grateful to Andrew for giving one to us. So back to the scene I wanted to talk about specifically. During chapter 9 of the book, the scene that absolutely broke me takes place. Silas is told that he is to meet his husband, an arranged marriage with some rich man's son. He's angry and hurt and completely broken down from staying at the conversion school his parents sent him to, and wants nothing but to claw his way out, and certainly doesn't want anything to do with his soon-to-be husband. But that completely changes during their introduction scene. Silas reluctantly gives his dead name to the person in front of him, who proceeds to say, "Is that what you want to be called?" At first, Silas is confused and scared, worried that his friend was seen through, worried that he was unsafe again, especially knowing that you cannot trust people with things like that in that world he lives in. But then she says, "Let's start over. My name is Daphne." Of course her name is Daphne. That line absolutely broke me, and Silas as well, clearly, since he breaks into tears, and I did as well when I read the scene. And I do whenever I read it again. Even now, I'm honestly tearing up when I talk about it. It is something I have experienced before, while still closeted and scared of telling anyone about my gender struggles, of telling anyone my real name. The first time you meet someone like you, that you know you aren't alone, that you recognize that there are other people like you out there, and that maybe you'll be okay. That exact moment of recognition is perfectly captured in this one scene of The Spirit Bears His Teeth. This book absolutely means the world to me, and I highly recommend that you read it if you haven't. There is so much more to it that I haven't mentioned or said in this video, but it will definitely be worth your time. The whole story with Lucy and Rilla is honestly a huge trans analogy. I'll just say it outright. Not exclusively, but it is hugely. Aside from the fact that Lucy is literally trans, it's very focused on the fact that the two of them stick together and support each other and love each other through all change, because they love each other for who they are as a person at the core, and not only the superficial idea that they have of each other. This specific scene for the cover of my sketchbook was also inspired by Howl's Moving Castle, if anybody has noticed already, which I'm sure you might have, the Rilla's bird form in this specific illustration is also just heavily inspired by Howl in the movie when he fully turns into a bird. Studio Ghibli has been a huge inspiration for me ever since I was a kid. I don't know how noticeable it is in my art, but my parents used to let me watch Studio Ghibli movies in Japanese without subtitles of all things, in hopes that I would learn Japanese. It unfortunately did not work. I did have a phase where I really wanted to learn Japanese and tried my best, but never really got there. Aside from that, I used to watch a lot of Soviet animation as well, since that is where I was raised. But yeah, I feel like how you grow up has a huge impact on what you're like as a person, especially if you're an artist. Though there's also that thing at the core of you as a person that is not influenced by how you grew up, I guess. But let me know if you can actually guess what fandoms I was in and what media I was interested in, that you think my art might be inspired by. It's also heavily inspired by artists that I like in general. Someone I follow, or used to follow a lot anyhow, is Sketches of Shay. I highly recommend checking them out. They were one of the main inspirations for me to start this YouTube channel, because I never thought about using traditional art and like a talk format, vlog format type thing for art, since YouTube is usually super fast paced and like, short interactive videos and not like super long art videos most of the time. But yeah, thank you, Shay, for inspiring me to start. And I'm trying to be more consistent this year. Also, I don't know if you can actually tell, but in this video I decided to not really speed up my painting process, at least most of the time. So a lot of this is just real-time speed of how I paint. It is a tedious process, it takes a long time. Absolutely worth it, and I enjoyed it a lot, but I feel like YouTube always glorifies like speed paints and not really showing how much goes into the real process a lot of the time, whereas I feel like that's interesting, especially if you don't do art, or if you do, since every artist's process is very different, so seeing how others work can be fun sometimes, at least for me. So before I start a big painting like this, I almost always do some kind of preparation. It can range from very detailed preparation like thumbnails and color testing and sketches and like multiple tries on a smaller page or canvas. But in this case, I decided to be pretty straightforward. Here I just did 2 thumbnails for potential ideas I had. These poses, at least the top one, is inspired by a photo that I saw on Pinterest, because it reminded me of Silas and Daphne. And then after that I just went straight into the painting, which you will see later on in this video, so stick around for that. I actually wrote a song inspired by The Spirit Bears Its Teeth a while ago, which I'm gonna put at the end of this video, so if you're interested in hearing some of my music, stick around for that. Back to Lucy and Mila. I really hope I can continue working on this project and exploring both of their characters. This story is rather more mature compared to At World's End, especially in terms of its protagonist. It doesn't actually have a name yet. I should work on that, but I think names for projects like this, especially when it's such a big one and long-term and ongoing, kind of just come naturally. I'm not exactly in a rush to publish it or anything. My current goal is to finish publishing At World's End before I finish high school, which is in 2 years. So that is 2 years to make, I don't know how many chapters honestly, but quite a few. And then after that I will get around to working on Lucy and Milla's story. Bird Night, that is. There will definitely be a lot more characters, and I will definitely explore a lot more themes outside of Lucy and Miller. Both personal themes of self-discovery and whatnot, but also a lot of societal comments. Same with At World's End, but this one is more actively commenting on society due to the setting, due to the fact that, it's not an apocalypse, so the society is still actively standing, even though it is not the same as our own. It is more of a fantasy society set in a medieval world of sorts. Also vaguely inspired by the Second Citadel from the Panama podcast, which I probably mentioned here before. But yeah, Lucy especially is very dear to me. She's somebody who has to hide her identity from the rest of the world, aside from her fiancé, Villa. Somebody who is very tough on the outside and only breaks down in private and never lets anybody else see. Somebody who acts very cold but actually cares way too much for her own good and is willing to sacrifice herself due to the fact that she does not believe that her life is actually worth as much as other people believe. She is a little reckless in that way, fighting monsters and taking on huge tasks instead of caring for herself, but her fiancé tries her best to balance it out, and they care for each other quite well, generally, but unfortunately that's not enough. This story is quite tragic, which you will probably see in a few years when I start working on it, but I hope you stay around to hear more about them, or maybe you'll stumble across this channel in 5 years when the comic about Lucy and Milla is out and see this and go, oh my god, the comic is so different from what they said about it 5 years ago. Maybe that will happen as well. I might redesign their characters. A lot of things could happen in that time, but I do hope I actually get around to publishing this project. So, future Ray, look the fuck in. Yeah. But yeah, gouache is super fun as well. I also added a gloss of transparent, it's not paint, I don't know what to call it, transparent gloss over this later, but you can't see. But yeah, that is the finished project for the cover of my sketchbook. This was the second thumbnail idea I had for the painting, though I ended up going with the first. I feel like I'm actually getting better at breaking down anatomy for both thumbnails and sketching in general. What helped a lot was Tom Foxtraw's book on anatomy that I'll link down below. I haven't gotten my hands on it quite yet, but there are a lot of excerpts from it online. So yeah, just breaking the body down into simpler shapes helps a lot, and that's something you hear a lot when learning how to draw and in tutorials for how to learn anatomy and stuff like that, but people never really specify what type of shapes to use, and the ones you do end up using in the beginning are often oversimplified to the point where you lose both the flexibility of the body and the expressiveness of it. But yeah. While the first thumbnail idea was them reading a book together in the bedroom, I guess. The second one was them under a picnic tree, or rather under a tree in general, which is also reminiscent of Daphne and Apollo, where which is where Daphne got her name from in the book. It's a rather sad story. I don't know how many of you are into Greek mythology, but way more depressing than the ending of The Spirit Bites Its Teeth. Also, just wanted to show my filming setup real quick. If there's a will, there's a way, guys. My filming setup is literally a phone holder taped to a lamp. But yeah, yippee! Finally starting the actual painting. I always love prepping the canvas itself. Yeah, it's super satisfying, especially if you've planned a painting for a long time beforehand. I didn't plan that much for this specific one, but still worth it. So I also just wanted to talk about the edges, the wooden corners for painting frames, because a lot of people use them, but not a lot of people actually know what they're for, including artists. And if someone asks you, you're just like, oh, well, they're just supposed to go there, I guess. So if you're like me, who only found out about this in art school a couple of years ago, these wooden corners are actually for holding your canvas tighter, because over time it becomes more loose, so you can actually go back with a hammer and hammer in the corners a little bit more to stretch the canvas again so that it remains taut. I learned this in school again from my art teacher when we were starting a painting project. So when starting my paintings, I usually prep the canvas. So in this case, I first sanded it down and then later on did the underpainting itself. Sometimes I also go in with a layer of white paint. Technically gesso is better, but I do not have gesso at the moment, so for this one I just sanded it down and then went straight into the underpainting itself. I usually use warmer tones for underpainting, so in this case it was again like reds and oranges. It's always funny looking at the sketch of your work, especially with paintings if you're an artist, because since you're the one working on the illustration and you know what it's going to look like later in your head, you're going, oh my god, yeah, this is going so well. This sketch shows perfectly what it's going to look like when it's finished, but other people looking in from the outside just see a bunch of messy lines and it looks super confusing. I'm sure, like, even right now looking at this, you probably can't really tell what's happening, or at least it doesn't look great. But when people say trust the process with art, you really need to trust the process. So thank you so much if you've stuck around this far. I hope you've enjoyed the video and my yapping about The Spirit Bites Its Teeth and my projects and my art process and whatnot. But as promised, I have inserted my song inspired by The Spirit Bites Its Teeth at the end of this video. If you like it, you can also find me on SoundCloud, which I will link down in the description, along with my sticker shop, commission info, and my Discord server for growing artists, as well as my current Tumblr. On to the song. He soaks his clothes in salt and lilac eyes and blatant lies, but was never meant to stain his clothes. but I've conquered